One question a lot of people ask me is, what do we do when we're worried about our behavior causing problems for our children and them also developing addictions? So I'll tell you what I've done for my son. So my son is 10, and for the last couple of years, we've done this thing where I took all of the recovery tools I use to recover from my binge eating and my addiction I used them and I turned them into a kid-friendly version that I could give to him. So my main tools are I maintain a conscious contact with my higher power each day. I also try to regulate my emotions in real time using my higher power. And I also reach out and I share with other people those experiences that I'm having. Now, one of the things that I did in order to learn to regulate my emotions really well each day, and also one of the things I do to stay in daily communion and contact with my higher power, is that there is a list of questions I ask not myself. I do it more in a two-way prayer. I take it to God in prayer each day to ask him these questions to help me to take an emotional inventory of things I can see, but also things that maybe I missed during the day. So this is what it looks like for me. I say, God, where was I fearful today? Where was I resentful? Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Those can show up in lots and lots of different forms. But I take those to God and I also ask, okay, who do I owe an apology? Is there anything that happened today that I need to tell someone right away and get cleared and reconciled? And there's a few other questions I ask myself. And so when I was trying to figure out how to help my son a couple years ago, because there were a couple compulsive behaviors I saw him doing, including hiding food and overeating, which scared me to death because those were things that were in my life and that led to the binge eating disorder later on. And so seeing that happen already at such a young age, first of all, I felt guilty because I was like, it's my fault. I taught him these behaviors. But second, it was just terrifying me to look ahead and see his future because I can see how that can take on a lot of different addictions, and for him to already be building out these blocks that I could see turning into addictive behaviors later, it really scared me because there are so many addictions you can get into, right? So I took this list of things that I knew that I was doing that gave me addiction recovery, that created a really intimate relationship between me and my higher power. And I was like, how can I use these and apply these for him now? I mean, he doesn't have an addiction, so obviously I'm not going to be using it for addiction recovery, but I know that these tools actually can be used to create addiction resilience, because the only reason that I developed an addiction in the first place was because I was just looking for something to help me to feel better. And addiction recovery came when I learned to use God, my higher power, in a way that helped me to get that relief better and faster in ways that lasted way longer than my addiction ever gave me. So I recognize that if I could have understood that as a child growing up, then I never would have had a use for my addiction because I outgrew my addiction. Once I was able to dial this in with God, I was like, oh, that's what I've been looking for. So cool. Don't need my addiction. Similarly, I believe and trust and have seen now that if children can dial this in now before they have an addiction, they probably will never have a use for one. I'll tell you how I applied it to my kid, and I'll also tell you how I know for sure it's working. First of all, I started doing this at night with him, and because when I saw these compulsive behaviors starting in his own life, at first I really wanted to police the behaviors, and I really wanted to be like, no, don't do that. Oh, you let's create habits that will help you just not do those things. But I also knew that if I started to police his behaviors or started to shame him for his behaviors, it would just create more emotional dysregulation that would cause him to be even more compulsive in the behaviors that he was in. So knowing that about myself and my own addiction, I approached my son in a different way. Instead of saying, oh, don't eat like that, don't do that, oh no, this could make you fat or whatever, I recognized that he was struggling with emotional regulation. So at night, I started doing with him what I was doing with myself. I started to ask him kid-friendly versions of, hey, where were you afraid today? Hey, who made you really mad? Did you feel really mad about stuff? Or hey, are there times that you just couldn't stop thinking about something and you're just thinking about something over and over and over again? Other forms of selfishness, like when we get in our head and we're really selfishly, consumed with what our own thoughts are. Or hey, were there any secrets that you kept today? Like, did there anything that made you feel like maybe you weren't being very honest? Or another one for dishonesty, a big one for me is, was there anything you're thinking that you might be afraid about that might happen, but that it hasn't happened yet? Because that's dishonest. Anytime we're creating a new reality that we're reacting to. So I just try to reframe those questions: selfishness, fear, dishonesty, and resentment in kid-friendly ways. He also asked me to add sad. So here's what my questions with my son look like every night. Is there anything that made you afraid today? Is there anything that really made you mad today? Is there any ways that you kept thinking about things and it was hard for you to think about the other people around you? Is there any way that you were dishonest? Like, did you keep secrets, or were you thinking about something that isn't even real? Anything like that? Is there anything that made you sad today? Is there anything else that made you feel just really uncomfortable in your heart that it was just hard to feel today? So I take him through those. And then I say, okay, so is there anybody that you owe an apology to? And I also ask him, are there any secrets that you're keeping, or is there anything else that you have to tell somebody right away? I also let him know that I am not asking him, because what I am trying to train him to do is how to do this two-way prayer with his higher power. I'm letting him know that, hey, this is not you having to confess these things to me, and maybe some of those things you don't even want to share, but we can talk about it and you won't get in trouble, even if you're mad at me, or even if it's something I did that made you afraid. And sometimes I'll say him, I'll even prompt him, I'll be like, yeah, I did yell at you earlier. Did that make you feel sad? Did that make you feel afraid that maybe you'd get in trouble? Did you get mad at me because I was yelling at you, or were you embarrassed? So sometimes if I know something happened that might have caused emotional dysregulation, I'll just talk to him about it and really honestly talk to him about it. So I give him those questions, but I let him know, hey, pause. This isn't a question I'm asking you and asking you to answer. Because a lot of times our mind doesn't even remember some of these things that happen. It just happens so fast that we don't think about it. So I'm showing him and teaching him how to pause and to ask these questions to his higher power, and pause and think about what comes to his mind. And so that I'm training him how to do this two-way prayer, to take an inventory of what was he holding in his heart today. Because I know that if he can just take an inventory of the collection of bad feelings that he collected today and then let them go at the end of the day, he will be able to live in a way that they're not piling and piling and piling and piling, and he'll live free and happy. I started doing this with him, and you would not believe the things that started to happen. One, I saw his behavior change. This is not the same kid that he was a couple years ago. Once we started to do this, his behavior did change. His compulsive behaviors unraveled. Shortly after that, he had a trauma, a really serious trauma that happened to him. And this allowed him to help to start to process that and have just be able to get ahead of the curve on how to move through these feelings and how to let them go. I've also recognized that as he's learned this at a young age, he's been able to process emotions way faster than I was when I was learning this in my 30s and 40s, trying to figure out how to learn this skill as I moved through addiction recovery. Because there are times now that I'll be like, hey buddy, did this thing, I'll say, was there anything that made you sad or mad and stuff today? And he'll just be like, no. And you will do it one question at a time. But sometimes I'll say, really? That thing earlier didn't make you mad? He's like, oh, yeah, it did make me mad, but I already gave it to God. I already let go of it. I'm not still mad about it. I'm not still feeling it. And so I'm realizing that he's been able to institute these principles and learn how to process emotions in real time way faster than I did at the beginning. And this kid has lived through multiple traumas in the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we've had a couple hard things happen to our family, but he's been able to process his emotions and do this extremely well. This past summer, he did have a situation came up that was really hard for him to move through and handle. And I noticed that for a couple weeks, I noticed some of those old compulsive behaviors starting again. And at first, it kind of scared me because I was like, oh no, maybe I need more tools. But I just trusted that, this is just one of those times in life where I know the skills that he's using have worked and are working. But sometimes life is just pouring in really fast, like in a funnel, because the tools I've given him, they will allow him to help him to continue to process and move through the experiences he has. And even this summer, when there was just a lot happening all at once, I saw some old compulsive behaviors coming back to play, but I recognize that, life's just pouring extra fast right now in that funnel, so there might be a little bit of spillage, and that's all that was happening. So I just trusted, I'm just going to keep using these tools that will continue to help him to process. And it did. He had a couple hiccups this summer and then just went right back to a place of he just lives in happiness, joy, peace. I mean, he gets dysregulated. We all do. But I'm telling you that these tools have worked, and I've seen them unravel his compulsive behaviors. And that reassures me that this is a kid who will live resilient to addiction in his life, as he can dial this in and feel that joy and feel the relief that comes with letting these things go, but also being able to get really fluent and really familiar with the path back to those feelings, the path back to joy. He is going to be super resilient. So I wanted to pass that on to you. If you're worried, oh no, as my addictive behaviors, are those going to be passed on? How can I protect my children? How can I protect them from the life that I've lived? So I hope that tip helps you. Good luck. Share this with someone else who is trying to create reduction and resilience in their kid's life. Sign up for my newsletter. I tell you more tips all the time. Thanks.